This podcast is brought to you by Reimagine Radio, the online radio station that aims to give you information on disability and music. My name's Graham Wyman, the program coordinator with the Vancouver Adapted Music Society. Today I'm joined again by Stanley in part 2 of our interview series for the Reimagine Radio podcast. Hi Kara, how you doing?
Good, Graham. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. And thank you for joining us again today.
Thank you for having me. It's the first half was really fun.
Oh no, thank you. And again, this is going to be great for the second half. So diving right in, some writers often listen to music to get them into the groove for writing. They say this allows them to get the words flowing. Do you have a similar experience? And if so, what artists are currently on your playlist?
I don't actually. When I write, I like it to be quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, it's one of the sort of daily little frictions in the house because I'm a very quiet person. Simon is a very loud person.
Right, gotcha.
And so we do section off the day.
Mm-hmm.
Quiet in the morning, and I usually get up early. I try and get a certain amount of work done before Simon even wakes up.
Right.
And then the afternoons are a little louder.
Yeah.
And we, and then we, right now we've been in quarantine, and we had, at the start of quarantine, just before it happened, we had built a little, storage unit for all of our old vinyl that had been, sitting in crates in
Gotcha.
the storage, and just, we hadn't played. And so right now we're actually having a really fun time kind of doing a deep dive into some of the music, we listened to as teenagers, and
Right.
some of the album collection have been donated from friends of ours, and it's even older music. So
Gotcha.
some of it is music we loved and listened to a lot when we were younger, and some, there's a whole series of Patsy Cline albums that I'm really excited to listen to. I've never had any Patsy Cline albums, and
Right.
so I'm looking forward to that. So we're kind of enjoying that in terms of our quarantine time,
Right.
and sort of it's like discovering that music all over again instead of having like big playlists and stuff. Just listening to an album, and sometimes there's amazing songs, and sometimes the songs are like meh, and sometimes a whole album together is amazing. And so we're having fun just exploring that right now.
It is interesting, just the different process of working or with playing vinyl, right? The whole experience behind, gotta flip it, it's a very like you have to give it a bit of love, right, in that instance, to really like get down.
It's like tactile in that sense, but almost like tactile in your ears when you hear the little,
the needle,
the
scratch,
and the scratches, and I think probably any go-to song in probably any day of my life, like my go-to music would be Taj Mahal.
Right.
That's pretty.
Yeah. That's always.
I could listen to Taj Mahal anytime.
That hits the spot, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so again, just touching on your point about how you enjoy when it's quiet to do your writing process, your office and where it is, you get a look on the backyard, and it's, nice.
Quiet. Yeah,
exactly. So no, I can see why that would be, that works very well for your workflow.
Yeah.
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 So, moving on, I guess, to the next question I had, which is tagging back into when Mouthful of Stars was recorded. And I was up there for the second round of recording, and that is actually when you received your physical copies of Fallen.
Right.
So maybe you could tell us a little bit what your feeling was of getting an actual physical copy in your hands and feeling this journey kind of culminate to that moment.
Well, I'd love to hear you describing it, because it was a time where Simon and I were both really nervous about it coming out, for one.
Of course.
It was really exciting to get the hard copy of it. And I have a really important writing mentor, Andreas Schroeder, and he had counseled me many times before to make sure to enjoy that moment.
Right.
because it is, you've often spent years of, invisible, often unpaid or mostly unpaid work to try and
Of course.
make that book happen. And it is. It's like having, something that's existed and lived in your head for a very long time, all of a sudden to be made concrete and tangible it's a pretty exciting moment.
Yeah.
I have to, but we were really nervous then. We were a little outside of our skin. There was a whole lot of stuff that was coming up for us that was out of our comfort zone. Mm-hmm. So I think I maybe don't even remember it as well as you do. It's fun to hear you describe it, because I'm like, yeah, it must have been an awesome moment.
Well, yeah, just to give our listeners, so I remember, I think we knew, or you guys knew, the day that it was gonna arrive. And right. So there was kind of that like excitement in the air of, oh, when's it gonna come? When's it gonna come? Yeah, and I just remember, like, I think we were actually taking a break when it happened, and it was myself, you, Simon, and Paul Rigby, the producer, and pedal steel, and another guitar player on the record was there as well.
And generally awesome human being.
Yes, exactly, totally. And so, no, it was funny. I just, remember, you gave me a copy, and I was not shy about the fact. I was like, oh, Kara, can you sign this? And I was like, I took this little joy being like, I got the first signed copy of Kara's book.
It's so embarrassing to sign copies. It felt so weird. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I know, right? I know. I remember that too. That's actually one of the things. I kind of had to coax you, I think, a little bit. Or you're like, let me take this away and think about what I want to say.
Yeah,
so, no, that was very.
I remember the first few readings. I was so, Simon's a performer. I am not. And so those first few readings, I was like kind of out of my skin, nervous. I was really nervous. And what I do really clearly remember, because most of the readings are sort of this like crazy blur.
Right.
But I do remember afterwards, when people would come up to get their books signed, I had just had this complete mental fog on how to spell people's names, or like they would say their name and I would hear it and immediately forget it. Like I was just like really, but I was just so sort of out of my skin. And so I remember like really struggling, like, how do you spell Sam?
Yeah, caught up in the moment. Yeah, exactly.
Those kind of moments. And they're like, did you actually write a book?
Right. Oh, that's funny. Well, no, and I mean, no, that must have been especially just very like liberating too, to be able to go out and like talk about the experience and have that. And so tagging on to, you were talking about doing your workshops, or not workshops, sorry. The next question I had was around a few months after you had Simon's CD release, as well as your first reading on the Sunshine Coast.
Right.
So what was it like seeing that event celebrated by the community on the Sunshine Coast?
It was amazing, and there had been a book release, and that had been a wonderful event. But it had been a couple months earlier, mm-hmm. And then we were also going to be at a festival a month later. So there were a few events on the coast planned, mm-hmm. And so it was the night at Ruby Lake where we did Simon's CD release, and that was just very serendipitous. They had actually asked me to do a reading and wanted to know if we thought maybe having music would be a good idea, and Simon and I were like,
we could possibly do that.
CD release to plan, and for people who don't know Ruby Lake Resort, it's fairly remote. It's on this small lake, Ruby Lake. It is incredibly beautiful outdoor natural amphitheater, mm-hmm. just an incredible space. Yeah. Not a lot of events happen there, and it's kind of sad because it's just a really, really wonderful space. So we were really excited to do it, but in the weeks that led up to it, it was a little stressful because the event went from being a very small idea of a reading, which doesn't, require a lot of infrastructure, to being a much bigger thing with a reading and a 5-piece band doing 2 full sets and a huge dinner. And we had to make a financial commitment to it in terms of guaranteeing the salary for the 5-piece band. We weren't sure what ticket sales would be. And then we ended up having a very large fire on the coast. And so the weeks heading into it were very uncertain. We didn't know if anybody would come at all. And it was one of the bigger events we had planned. And so, but when the day actually came, it was a beautiful day, and the event was sold out, and it was it was one of the most amazing nights of my life. We had Simon's parents came from Quebec, his sister came from Toronto, our son flew in from Victoria, the whole family was there, the whole community was there, all really awesome band members were there, you were there. It was just it really felt like, I think that the tagline on the poster had been a celebration under the stars, and it really, really felt like that. The other events were great. The event at the Literary Festival, also a wonderful night in my life, but the Ruby Lake Resort, that will definitely go down as a highlight of my life. It was a beautiful night.
No, it was. And it was just exciting again to see again, that was my, I think, second time, because the night before, but my second time seeing the full band. Or I don't even know if Walter was at that Friday show.
I think he was.
Okay.
Simon will remember, but I'm pretty sure he was.
Okay,
but,
maybe I was.
But it could be. And it was also really nice. Ruby Lake was really nice because Simon and his other musical partner, Joe Stanton, did an opening act too. And Joe Stanton is a huge part of our life, and had been a huge part of the writing of Fallen. And Joe also accompanied us to a lot of our readings and workshops that we did. And so he wasn't at that first show on the Friday night, but it was really great to have him to be a part of the event. He played on Mouthful of Stars, but he wasn't sort of, he just did a couple of duo songs with Simon on A Mouthful of Stars. And they have an earlier CD together. So that it was also really great to have him there as well. He's a big part of everything. Yeah, no, and I mean, he's played at a few VAMS events with Simon as well, right? So that's right, yeah.
No, they're always great together. So, speaking about the workshops that you were talking about, you and Simon have done quite a few of them. Speaking about your journey together, and so what has that been like for you, and how do you feel it may have informed people on the healing power of music?
Well, I mean, as I said earlier, I'm not a performer, and so it really took me out of my comfort zone getting up, and it did get easier, and I started to enjoy it more. Simon, who is a performer, that was a little easier for him, but it was the first time really since his accident that he had done any traveling, and that was something for him out of his comfort zone. So the whole process did take us out of our comfort zone in probably very healthy and good ways. And it certainly, we met so many interesting people, and we went to places we never would have gone. And so it was really great for us. It's been a really wonderful consequence of publishing the book. And when we went, we're not music therapists. That's an entirely different skill set. So, our intention has always just been to try and tell our story as honestly and as, as transparently as possible. We want to take people on a little bit of a journey through the readings and through the music. I think, people, when you meet Simon, he really kind of embodies, the power of music, I think, in a lot of ways. When you meet him, when you see him, and he's a really talented performer, and he has that capacity to make people feel things when he performs a song. And and I think that's what art does for us, whether it's writing or visual or dance or music. it makes us feel things. It slows us down so we have that awareness of what it is we are actually feeling. Mm-hmm. And I think that awareness is a prerequisite for understanding ourselves and our world and you know what we're going through. And I think that understanding itself is a prerequisite for healing.
Right.
We have to be able to feel things to be able to move through them. You know, if you can't feel it, you get kind of stuck in
locked
that.
Up.
And you know, and that's just not happy positive things, but it's also some of the more difficult, challenging ones. And I talked earlier in the first session about how the whole process, you know, ultimately looking back at it, I can see it as being therapeutic. And I think part of that is an understanding that I have come in myself, is that it's not just healing, but also aging and, you know, just the creative process, all of these different processes, healing, aging, creativity. I've started very much not thinking of it in a linear way, gotcha. As if you're sort of approaching some finite end goal, like you're going to be fixed or healed or, you know, yeah. But more in life where, you know, and as creative artists, we're always moving in a spiral. Right. You know, it's like we keep returning to the same place over and over again, but each time in a slightly different context, so that, you know, each time we return, we have maybe new resources, but also new challenges, new limitations, new opportunities. You know, it's sort of, we keep coming back to the same place, and each time we do, it's different.
Yeah. It's always evolving.
Yeah, it's always evolving.
Yeah. So to take a little bit of a left-hand turn, I wanted to talk about, and we did speak about this in the first session, but your technically first novel, but second novel published, Ghost Warning, which takes the reader through the story of the character Lou and her dealing with the loss of her Lou and her father. This also takes us through the character's path to discovery, through her experiences. So, which scene or chapter in the book was the most difficult to write for you, if it was at all?
It was a hard book to write. I had worked on it a long time, for many years before Simon's accident and before I wrote Fallen. And in fact, just before Simon's accident, it was my thesis for my grad work. And so I had done a sort of my final thesis version, and it was sufficient enough to get my graduate degree, but I knew that it wasn't quite where I wanted it to be to publish. And so I had taken it, and as writers often do, I took the whole manuscript, I hid it away in a drawer. And I was like, I have to step away. I have to get some objectivity. I'll come back to it. And at that time, I thought maybe like 3 months. Gotcha. But then, you know, Simon's accident happened, and our whole life sort of, you know, with the whole snow globe got all shaken up, and we weren't sure where things were going to land for a long time. And then I wrote Fallen. And so, you know, instead of 3 months, it was like 5 or 6 years later when I pulled it out of the desk drawer. But I think I really needed that time to be able to finish it. I needed to learn something. I needed to grow up in some way. I needed life experience to understand what I was trying to do with that story. And I think when I went back and read the draft, after the experience of Simon's accident, after the experience of publishing Fallen, when I went back and read that draft, I could really see, I think first time clearly, that it was really a story about grieving and about finding your own balance in a world that is, you know, constantly surprising you, maybe constantly scaring you, that's constantly in flux. Right. And when I had that insight, then I was able to go back and write a final draft and sort of just tighten up those connections and make it more intentional. And I mean, it wasn't that it was easy, but it was it was a more straightforward process than what it had been earlier when I was sort of, I was kind of flailing about trying to figure what the story was about. Gotcha. I didn't quite have it.
Yeah.
And so, I guess life sort of gave me what I needed to be able to go back in and see what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what are you currently working on at the moment?
I am working on a nonfiction book about chronic pain.
Okay. Yeah.
So it'll involve personal stories. Simon is somebody who has, for like the last 11 years, had pretty extreme amounts of chronic pain. So it will have the sort of personal story aspects of it, but there's the research on pain is the hardest part about the book is being able to narrow it down, because there's so many different directions you could go in. There's so much really fascinating research. So hopefully we're going to draw in different. The experience of pain is like everything from a stubbed toe to neurodegenerative diseases. The word pain is it's a pretty we ask a lot of it because it's describing so many different forms of experience. And so I wanted it not to be just our experience. I wanted to have they're going to be representative. There's no way a book, a single book, could really cover the totality of the chronic pain experience, but hopefully we'll get a couple of different perspectives that will be able to offset ours.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, no, I'm sure I definitely look forward to reading it when it's out. The last question I kind of have for you, we've kind of throughout our series or our talks talked about the pandemic, and people have talked about trying new hobbies. You obviously mentioned the, setting up the vinyl player and listening to that. Again, and you kind of touched on this, but maybe just to recap, how have you been spending your time during the pandemic? And have there been any other creative endeavors that you and Simon have been doing together?
Well, right now the book is taking up. I'm a very mono-focused person. Simon has a much greater capacity for being sort of creatively involved in multiple different things.
Gotcha.
I tend to be much more mono-focused. I'm like I've got the book that's taking up all the bandwidth.
Yeah.
So I haven't started anything new. We of course have been very aware of how much uncertainty and heartache and worry and in some cases some of the other things that are going on in the world, the anger that is sort of all around us right now, and we're very aware of it, but we're also in our little bubble. We're very content and happy, and part of that is that we both are working at home. We had that sort of in place before the pandemic happened, and so not a lot of our life has changed. It's actually just kind of slowed down in a really for me, writing the book, beneficial way, and for Simon, who has been dealing with chronic pain, it's actually been it's kind of felt like a very needed break, for the both of us. So I wouldn't say we've really started new endeavors, but we have been just more enjoying some of the things that we do in the house, like slowing it down and spending time in the garden, getting to little chores around the house that that have been bugging me at the back of my mind for a long time, and it feels so great to get them done. You and I were talking earlier about art, so we've been changing up some of the things in the house that just when you're in your busy life you don't really have the time to do. And we spend a little bit more time as you say, cooking, putting on an album, cooking, kind of slowing that whole process down and just enjoying it instead of rushing through our days.
Yeah, being in the moment.
So, so things haven't changed that much, but I would say, aside from this awareness of the difficulties that the world at large is experiencing, for us it's actually been a very happy and productive and restorative time, which I think is is really wonderful when you get both of those things, where you feel a little refreshed, but also like you're actually getting to the work you really want to get to.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's fantastic.
So it's been good for us. I mean, we're very lucky because we're very geographically privileged. We're on half an acre of land. It's fenced. We have a garden. We've been eating from the garden since March, and I can see us doing it like late into the fall. It's been a really good growing year. And so, we can go walk our dog, and we don't feel too stuck. It's going to be a little different maybe when the not so great weather comes.
Right.
Because I was saying to Simon, we've been in isolation, but it's corresponded with some very nice weather.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Well, so I think we're pretty lucky in our community here. There's not a lot of there haven't been many cases here, and people take it generally pretty seriously as well. So we feel, I think, in our community and in our home, pretty safe right now.
Yeah, well, no, fingers crossed it definitely stays that way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Kara, thank you so much for participating in these interviews. And to take us out, I know on the last session we talked about some songs that you had a connection with, that you were a part of, and I think this time out, because this was your initial reaction, I think we'll go out with Nothing Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. I was thinking that Nothing, or else the other one that was really fun to write was also Sweet Melinda. I mean, you picked Sweet Melinda. Was a fun one to write as well too on that. And actually, it's a bit of a cheat because Simon totally wrote that whole song. I was away doing some readings for Ghost Warning.
Okay.
And I came home and I was like, that song's so awesome. I have to write a verse so that I can be in it. But that was a fun one too. The Grooves and Ruts CD was really fun too. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, we did play that one for Simon's podcast, so if
perfect. Okay, so you can do Nothing Nothing.
Yeah, we'll do Nothing, but I highly suggest people check out not only Mouthful of Stars, but Grooves and Ruts and Good Road Home. But thanks again. So Nothing's going to take us out, and thank you for our listeners to tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and keep that music flowing.
They say that lightning never strikes twice. Well, I don't believe that's true. Nothing's ever flashed through me. Nothing like you. Nothing's ever lit me up. Nothing in this wide blue world. No, nothing's ever lit me up, darling. Nothing like you do. First time you wore that cotton dress, flowers were green and blue. Nothing ever looked so pretty. Nothing like you. Nothing ever stood before me and made this wide world turn. No, nothing ever moved before me and made this wild heart yearn. Second time it rained in the city, seems so important than asking you to dance. They say that lightning never strikes twice. Why I don't believe that's true. Nothing's ever flat.